Unmute myself here. That's a little better. Welcome, everybody. I'm just going to admit a few more people to the meeting and then we'll get started. On va commencer dans quelques instants lorsque d'autres personnes vont se joindre à nous. Et je vais juste mentionner que je vais enregistrer la séance aujourd'hui. Comme ça, au cas où que vous devez quitter ou revenir plus tard, vous aurez accès après. So I'll just be recording today's session. So if you have to leave early, you'll be able to come back and view it a little bit later on the site. So my name is Kate Hooten, and I'm the manager of the Medicine Admissions Office. And today, this session is going to focus on admissions to the medical program for our qualifying year. So for our medp program, which is 1 year before entering the 4-year MDCM program. Donc aujourd'hui, on va parler des admissions en médecine spécifiquement pour les étudiants du cégep pour l'année préparatoire, juste avant de faire les 4 ans en médecine. We've got lots of people still joining us, so I'll just admit a few more before we move forward. And as well, during the session, if you'd like to put questions in the chat, please go ahead and then I'll answer them at the end, because otherwise it's a little bit hard to see. Donc, n'hésitez pas à mettre vos questions dans la boîte de clavardage, puis je vais pouvoir vous répondre à la fin. So one of the first questions maybe you might ask yourself is why McGill Medicine? So a few of our key values that we have on here, we really value diversity in our program. Our students are multicultural, multilingual. They come from a lot of different academic backgrounds. So we'll go into that a little bit later. But in addition to students coming from cégeps and the collegial level, we also have students coming in with bachelor's degrees, all different kinds, other types of university degrees as well. We offer our program in 2 languages. Donc, notre programme est offert dans 2 langues. On va en parler un peu plus par la suite, mais c'est en français à Gatineau et en anglais à Montréal, mais quand même, tous les stages auront lieu au Québec, donc c'est quand même assez bilingue. So we have a great international reputation as well at McGill. We have access to some really fantastic professors who love to share their knowledge with you. And it's really a quality educational experience. We're blessed to have particularly excellent anatomy labs and research centers at all of our clinical sites as well. So some of the questions you might want to ask yourself before embarking on a medical program is really, can I handle the intense academic program that's required, because it is very, very intensive? Are you passionate about medicine? Really, it's about helping other people. So how do you feel about working directly with other people every day? And what kind of experiences have you had in your life to date that have allowed you to develop the competencies that we're looking for medicine? Donc, les compétences qu'on recherche, il y a le côté académique, c'est ça, mais aussi le côté non académique qu'il faut soigner. So, as I mentioned, excellence in your academics, ethical and professional conduct. Of course, it's very important in our future physicians, and also just an awareness of the world around you. So physicians certainly hold a position of privilege in our society, but really it's in service to others. So in terms of the admissions guiding principles, I just like to highlight a few. So again, we're seeking different types of excellence. We're really trying to be inclusive to all different types of qualified applicants. We want to be sure that our programs are aligned with what we're seeking. We want to treat all of our applicants fairly, and we want to share with you what the selection process is so you can be well prepared. Et aussi, je tiens à mentionner que tout se passe de façon assez bilingue, donc n'hésitez pas à nous poser des questions dans les 2 langues. Je vais mentionner ici un petit peu sur la cohorte de l'année préparatoire qu'on a admis l'année passée. Alors, l'année passée, pour 2021, on avait 73 étudiants qui étaient admis, divisés entre nos 2 campus, comme j'ai mentionné. And among last year's medp class, it does tend a little bit to be more heavily francophone because everyone's coming from Quebec, out of a Quebec cégep. And so thinking about the demographics in our province, that makes sense. And of course, we always have a large cohort of people who for whom neither French nor English is their first language. It does tend to be more heavily female. You can see here. I think that's also often the case in some of the cégep classes. So we're not unlike other universities in that respect. But there's obviously no particular preference for one or the other, it's just kind of the way it falls. And this year we were happy to receive to be able to admit candidates from 19 different cégeps across Quebec. So really the particular cégep that you go to, it makes no difference at all. So if you're here, if you're in this session and you're in high school right now and you're thinking about applying to cégep, please know that we look at the R score. And so this is something that's normalized across Quebec so that everyone is assessed on the same kind of playing field, whether you're from a big private cégep or a very small public cégep. Really, it's the same. You should choose the cégep that's right for you. So maybe one that offers, extracurriculars that you're interested in, or is close to your family, or in a new city that you want to discover. So have a look at those kinds of things, and don't worry about coming into a particular cégep or anything like that. So every year we have some people from Montreal cégep, some people from other cégeps, some people from the farthest reaches as well. Je vais mentionner un petit peu sur les hôpitaux, là où vous ferez vos expériences cliniques. Donc, on aime beaucoup les acronymes. On a une RUIS. Donc, c'est le réseau de santé. Les 4 facultés de médecine du Québec, ont chacun leur région, leur territoire pour offrir des soins avec les hôpitaux universitaires. Et pour McGill, ça couvre en fait 63% de la territoire du Québec. C'est immense. Donc, on a bien sûr les hôpitaux qu'on voit ici à Gatineau et à Montréal, plus vers l'ouest du centre-ville de Montréal. Mais aussi, notre RUIS couvre l'ouest de l'île de Montréal, juste un peu plus loin, Vaudreuil-Soulanges, etc. Et aussi une partie du Montérégie-Sud, aussi toute l'Abitibi et Nunavik. Alors, c'est quand même immense. So we've got centers and experiences across not only kind of the western side of Montreal more, but across Quebec as well. So be prepared to travel a little bit if you're in medicine, but you'll really get to see a lot of different experiences as part of your program with us. Je vais parler un peu plus de notre campus à Outaouais, à Gatineau. Donc, ça a commencé en 2020. On a tout le programme MDCM en français et aussi l'année préparatoire, ce qui est offert en partenariat avec l'UQO. Donc, en medp, vous aurez vos cours à l'UQO, mais les cours de sciences sont enseignés par les enseignantes de McGill sur place en français, et les cours à options sont offerts, sont ceux de l'UQO. Alors, c'est une cohorte entre 15 et 20 étudiants pour l'année préparatoire. Et là, pour le programme MDCM, vous êtes rejoint par entre 4 et 9 universitaires. Donc, c'est un plus petit campus. On voit la photo, le dessin là-bas. C'est tout nouveau. C'était bâti sur les urgences de l'hôpital à Gatineau. Alors, vraiment, c'est une expérience qui est un peu plus intime parce que c'est une petite cohorte, mais là, vous allez voir vraiment plein de choses partout. Et c'est ouvert à tous les résidents du Québec, cette option-là. Il faut juste exprimer les préférences du campus après les entrevues dans le processus de sélection. So if you're interested in studying in Gatineau at our campus Outaouais, it's after the interviews that we'll ask you, if we're able to make you an offer, are you interested in accepting it only in Gatineau, only in Montreal? Or you could say, oh, I would be fine with either one, but I'd prefer Outaouais, or I'd prefer Montreal. And then we go down our list and make you the offer for your best choice with what we have available when we get to your spot on the list. So I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what the medp year entails. So as I mentioned, we have it in English in Montreal and in French in Gatineau. It's 10 courses over 2 semesters, so the fall semester and winter semester, a little bit like cégep, the kind of setup that we have there. And you'll be taking some required science courses that'll help prepare you for med school. And then also you have a choice of electives. So downtown Montreal, they can be taken from McGill's Faculty of Arts or Science. And in Outaouais, as I mentioned, they're just amongst the course offerings of UQO. So it really gives you a chance to explore, what is it like at university? You have this nice year where you're really in with other science students, just kind of getting used to the university atmosphere, having a chance to explore some of your other interests before you launch into the very intensive medical part of the program. And so during that medp year, in order for us to be able to move you on to the medical program, you do need to maintain an average of B, so it's about 70% in your science courses, and overall an average of about 3.5 on 4.0. So that's on the the university level GPA scale. It's equivalent, it's kind of in between a B plus and an A minus. And of course, you want to make sure that you're behavior is completely professional, because that's very important for future physicians. I have to say too, people always ask questions. Is this hard to do? Do people get, kicked out or failed? I would have to say very rarely. This is a very achievable average to maintain for people who are coming in from CEGEP with a really high R score. In general, if people are not doing well, it's because unfortunately maybe they've had something bad is going on in their personal life, or they've had a medical situation, and really then we're working on reaching out and helping them, not trying to remove them from the program, for sure. So then, after your MedP year, you will enter the medical program. Donc, je vais parler un peu plus de ce qui est dans chacune des parties ici, mais on voit dans les programmes de médecine en tant que tel, les 4 ans d'études, c'est organisé d'une façon un peu différente que le cégep ou la première année, l'année préparatoire. Les cours sont plus courtes, donc souvent c'est 4 semaines, 6 semaines, et là, on va changer de système en système. Donc, pour les premiers 18 mois, ici, on a les fondements de médecine et médecine dentaire. Vous êtes avec vos collègues de la faculté de médecine dentaire. Et là, vous allez voir tous les systèmes, etc. La deuxième partie de la deuxième année, c'est 6 mois, c'est la transition vers la pratique clinique. Donc, vous êtes à l'hôpital, vous allez voir comment ça fonctionne sans avoir la responsabilité pour les patientes. Donc, ça, c'est très rassurant pour nos étudiants de un peu savoir qu'est-ce qui se passe, comment ça va, parce que les 2 dernières années, c'est l'externat. Et là, vraiment, vous êtes à l'hôpital beaucoup, beaucoup, et vous allez commencer à avoir des responsabilités pour les patientes. Notre 4e partie, vraiment, c'est physicianship, ou ce que c'est être un médecin. Alors, c'est des petits cours qui sont parsemés dans le programme, qui vous montrent le professionnalisme, l'identité professionnelle et tout ça. On a des thèmes aussi qui sont comme un peu dans chacun des cours, des cours à choix que vous aurez à faire en plus. C'est ça. Je vais parler un peu plus des objectifs ici. Donc, vraiment, les premiers 18 mois, c'est qu'est-ce que c'est le corps humain, les processus des maladies. Vous avez des cours magistraux aussi, des petites sessions en laboratoire. Et une chose qui est très intéressante, c'est le Longitudinal Family Medicine Experience. Ça, c'est vraiment, vous êtes jumelé avec un médecin de famille, et là, plusieurs fois par mois, vous allez voir dans sa pratique, observer, parler avec lui. Nos médecins sont très généreux avec leur temps, alors c'est super, et je sais que nos étudiants apprécient vraiment beaucoup le contact avec le milieu clinique dès la première année de médecine. C'est ça. Puis pour la transition vers la pratique clinique, comme j'ai dit, c'est à l'hôpital, on va pratiquer comment je parle avec les patientes, comment je fais l'examen physique, etc. Il y a aussi une partie Community Health Alliance Program. Donc ça, c'est du travail communautaire qui est fait, un projet de travail communautaire qui est fait par chaque étudiant, vraiment pour voir nos patients dans leur milieu. C'est qui que je vais servir dans ma profession. Et là encore, pour l'externat, on est vraiment à l'hôpital. Il y a certains services qu'on va avoir obligatoirement, puis d'autres que vous allez pouvoir choisir. Peut-être de penser, après mes 4 ans en médecine, il y a aussi la résidence à faire. So we have to specialize after our 4 years of medicine before we can be an independent physician. And so it's a time to explore what you might be interested in, to think about for your residency. Do you want to be a family physician? So that's usually 2 years of residency with some optional specializations after. Or maybe you're interested in surgery, cardiology, psychiatry, dermatology. There are tons and tons of specializations that you'll be learning about while you're in medical school. We have a really great career office to help you with that as well. So I'll just show you a little bit. People often wonder, what is the typical day like? So our med students have put together a little sort of year by year what you're doing each day. So in Med 1, as I mentioned, there are a lot of lectures. And then in the afternoon, there are some more practical types of courses. You learn how to use the ultrasound machine, have some practice sessions. We have some sort of pretend patients in our simulation center who will allow you to practice before you have the real thing to do. That sort of continues as you go through Med 2, and really in Med 3 and 4, you'll mostly be in the clinic. They wanted to be sure to mention that you do have time to continue to pursue your own interests as well. I'll mention too on here, there are a few things that our students mentioned. Also, once you're into the four-year medical program, our program has pass-fail grading. So while you have grades in your preparatory year, in medical school, it's pass or fail. Of course, you get feedback on how you're doing, so you know how you're doing, but it kind of relieves a little bit of the pressure in terms of grades right there. We really want to support you in your learning. Comme j'ai mentionné, on a plusieurs services pour vous soutenir. Notre bureau source, the Well Office, il y a des conseillères en carrière, du soutien psychologique spécialement pour les étudiants dans les professions de la santé, qui est très important. C'est une profession qui est très exigeante, comme on sait. Alors, on veut vous aider à vous prendre soin de vous aussi. Other pictures I have on here, this is our beautiful library, the Osler Library, which is actually being restored right now. So that's a beautiful place to go and study and see some fantastic historical medical texts as well. And then we have at McGill the Office for Students with Disabilities. So if you've received accommodations during your high school or your CEGEP, we also are able to offer that at McGill. So the fine folks there can put you in touch with what you need. I'll just talk a little bit about how our class is made up. So the government of Quebec gives us a certain number of seats in medicine for each medical school in Quebec. And so our overall class is about 200 people. It varies from year to year. Some years they give us a few more seats or not. And as CEGEP applicants, you'll be in the Quebec University group. So this is the medp year. So after people finish the medp year, there are about 70 of them. They're promoted into the mdcm program. They're joined by university level students. So it may be the case for you as well. You're thinking, I don't necessarily want to apply to medicine for the preparatory year program, but maybe I'll do my bachelor's degree and then apply. So if that's the case, you'd be coming in the Quebec Resident University program. Oops, sorry, to head there. And we have a couple special groups within that too. We have for university level students, a rural and small populations cohort. We have some students who have a medical degree from somewhere else in the world who come in. We have a program for Quebec First Nations and Inuit candidates. So that's open to both university level and CEGEP level candidates. So if you're a First Nations member or Inuit, you're welcome to get in touch with us about that. I have another slide that gives you some more details. And we have new this year for both university level and CEGEP level candidates, a program for self-identified Black candidates. So we're very open to receiving your applications in this cohort as well. Other groups that make up our class, we have 10 seats for Canadians with a university degree who are not from Quebec. So it's not a lot of seats, but we have a few. One for a Canadian Indigenous person from outside of Quebec, usually 2 international seats, and also a few seats for Canadian Armed Forces members. So that's who will be in the class with you if you come in with us. So I mentioned a little bit about our special pathways. We work closely with our Social Accountability and Community Engagement Office and our Indigenous Health Professions program. And so they offer some support to prospective applicants. You may have seen them. They often run programs in high schools. They offer some outreach events that are really fantastic. And so we always encourage students to reach out to them directly if they'd like to learn more about what it's like in our program. We can hook you up with some mentors or student ambassadors and some support for your application. Specifically as well for Indigenous candidates. So as I mentioned with the Quebec First Nations and Inuit program, there are 6 seats that are shared by Quebec's 4 faculties of medicine for eligible candidates. And for this process, we're looking for a minimum R score of 28, and then you have your file reviewed by an Indigenous committee, and you'll have a little interview and then also our medicine interview as well. And McGill has the First People's House in addition to our Indigenous Health Professions program that offers some really great support and just fellowship. I know they offer weekly lunches. It's just a really nice place to go and hang out as well on campus. And so I mentioned too for Black candidates, any Quebec residents who self-identify as Black, university or CEGEP level. Similarly, the minimum R score for this cohort is 34.5, and we have the files with a personal statement reviewed by the Black faculty and community member file review group, and they recommend candidates to come forward to interview. At that point, you're competing just with the rest of the Quebec cohort. So really what we're looking for is to be sure that our class is representative of the community in Quebec that we find ourselves in. That definitely helps better healthcare outcomes for all of us. And for rural candidates, for medp, Le ministère de la Santé octroie comme un boni de 0,5 pourcentage à la cotère pour les candidats qui ont fait l'école secondaire dans des régions rurales spécifiques du Québec qui sont desservies ou mal servies par les médecins. Donc, ce n'est pas quelque chose qui est fait par McGill. Le cotère nous arrive déjà avec cette notification-là. Pour les universitaires, par contre, on a un programme qui est un petit peu différent. Alors, si c'est votre cas et que vous pensez postuler plus tard pour médecine après l'université, si vous avez fait la majorité de votre école dans une école publique au Québec, qui est dans une petite ville ou un milieu rural, vous pouvez postuler pour cette catégorie-là aussi. Je vais parler maintenant un petit peu des critères d'admission et le processus de sélection pour notre programme. Donc, what do you have to do to be eligible for our program? So as I mentioned, this is specifically for the medp preparatory year for students who are coming in with a science deck. So you have to be a legal resident of Quebec. So you'll be a permanent resident of Canada or a citizen already and have established your residency in Quebec. So as I mentioned, you'll be in a science program. We also accept the Sciences, Lettres et Arts. And if you're in a French bac program with Marie de France or Stanislas, that's also acceptable, as long as you complete all of your Quebec components and your school calculates an R score for you. So when you apply, you have to be in your final year of your program, and you have to have completed your program in 2 years without interruption. So we're pretty strict about this. I'll mention there are a very few exceptions. One is if you came into like the bridging program or Programme Tremplin, where you couldn't go right into a science deck, but then you came in and finished it basically in 2 years from the point where you started. If you did 1 year in a different pre-university deck and then switched to science, so you could take a little bit longer there, but we do still look at the whole R score, so that may or may not be helpful for people. Or if you have extenuating circumstances, like you had a serious medical or family issue and some documentation about that, you can let us know. We would understand that if you had to take drop out from some courses for a serious medical reason or family reason, that it would take you a little bit longer in that case. What's really important is that no semester, unless you have, a medical reason, is fewer than 6 courses. So I know normally in a cégep term, you'll have usually 6 or 7 courses. We don't want you to drop below 6 courses though, because we're comparing people really we want people on the same basis when we're comparing them. So for example, no prerequisite courses in the summer. So those would be, or by distance, and no equivalencies for your program core courses. So you could take, maybe one of your language courses or your electives in the summer, as long as you still have 6 courses in each of your fall and winter semesters. When I mentioned prerequisites, those are really the core science courses that we're looking for. So biology, chemistry, physics. I'll talk a little bit about language proficiency. So for this year coming up, what we do with our candidates is when you come in, if you've never studied in French before, so you didn't do high school or cégep in French, we'll ask you to take a test with our continuing studies faculty, and they'll let us know, and what level you're at for your French, and we'll recommend some courses that you can take. You can take it as an elective during your medp year, or evening courses as well. Really, it's very, very important that our candidates be comfortable in French, especially. English for sure. If you're on the Montreal campus, the courses will be in English, so that's important. As you saw at the beginning, we have a lot of students who are coming in who are francophones, des personnes qui n'ont jamais étudié en anglais, puis ils se débrouillent quand même très, très bien. Vous êtes entourés d'amis qui sont là pour vous aider. On a aussi des cours à McGill pour peaufiner votre anglais académique, parce que si c'est la première fois, je sais que ça peut être un défi. But really, what's very important to us is people's French proficiency, because you'll be working in the clinical environment in Montreal. And so there are Francophone hospitals in Quebec, and some people say, oh, there are also English hospitals. It's actually not the case. Those hospitals are officially bilingual, so you're really required to be able to work with patients and colleagues in French as well. If you're not looking to apply for this year, but you're applying for 2023, for next year, we are going to be requiring proof of French at the time of application. So it could be, we're going to be accepting all kinds of different tests, but we'll also have an agreement with our continuing studies faculty For a lower cost test, it'll be sort of a two-step test that you can do in the fall before you apply, a written test online. And then if we're able to invite you to interview, we'll also ask you to take a short oral test with them to confirm the level. In terms of the level that we're looking for, really mid-intermediate if you're going to be on our Montreal campus, and advanced if you're going to be on the Outaouais campus, because of course you'll be working in French, your academics will be in French. So if you've done both your high school and your cégep in Quebec, we won't have to have you be tested. So that might apply to a lot of people. But if, for example, you did high school somewhere else and then you came to Quebec to do cégep, then you will have to do the test. So I'd just like to share that information with everybody. And the selection process, so I alluded to it a little bit there. 70% of the first step of assessment is academic, so that's the R score. We look at your global R score, all the courses you've taken in together. If you did a double deck, it's all the courses, everything. So 70% academic, 20% the Casper test. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And then 10%, we have a standardized CV that you'll fill in and submit to us, and we have that scored by our admissions raters. And all of those together then make us 100%, and we have a list, and we can invite the top people on that list to our interviews. So we do many multiple interviews, and that's worth 100% for the final order of the offer of admission. Yep, so I mentioned there the academic, we've got our global R score. In recent years, the average for being invited to an interview has been 37, which I know is very, very high. The lowest competitive score is usually around 34.5 to receive an interview. That's just kind of mathematically, when we combine that 70% with the other factors, that's where it falls. It can vary every year. So this is what it's been in the past, but it's no guarantee it will necessarily be the same. It depends on who's applying. And just to note that if this affected you, I think if I'm thinking in terms it may have, we don't include the winter 2020 term in the R score. The government didn't calculate it as part of the R score, so we just take what they send to us. And we also don't use that when we're checking for the course load. So we know that some people had to drop courses in that term because of the pandemic, so we're not taking that part into consideration. We do need you to have obtained all of your prerequisite courses though. So if you have something that affected you in winter 2020, an extenuating circumstance, you don't need to let us know about it because it's just kind of left out for everyone. And we're not including it exceptionally. If you said, oh, I did really well in that term, I'd like you to include it. Unfortunately, we're applying this to everybody equally. The science prerequisites. So if you're doing a science deck program, these are all part of your program. You don't have to worry about them, but it's just what we make sure that you've got in there. For special programs, we have a few little adjustments. So you can have a look there. This is also all on our website. I think the most important thing is sciences lettres. Sometimes people get a little bit in trouble. We need 2 physics courses. So this one definitely, this competency code, and one of these 2. So I really recommend people get in touch with their conseiller pédagogique at Cégep, speak with them, get in touch with our office. If you're not sure if you're in one of these special programs, if you're not sure what applies to you, let us know. For the French back, if you're doing that in Quebec, we really just need the complément québécois and an R score. In terms of the non-academic competency, so as I mentioned, we have the Casper test. So this is an online test of situational judgment. So it's done as like a little video vignettes, and you're typing your response. It's not a spelling or a grammar test. It's really to hear from you and your thinking about all of these non-academic competencies that I've got listed over here. It's a third-party company that offers this test for us, and you have to take it in the year that you're applying. So for most of our Cégep candidates, that'll be, January, February. You have to take it before the March 1st application deadline. So I just have over here, I've written it down. This year, the last test dates that we'll accept, there's an English test on February 17th, so coming up next week. And in French, le dernier test Casper en français cette année, c'est le 22 février, alors aussi bientôt. Donc, il faut prendre contact avec la compagnie qui offre le test Casper, s'inscrire, faire le test, ça vaut 20% dans notre processus. Et pour le CV, on a un modèle de CV sur notre site web. J'encourage fortement tout le monde à aller voir le modèle et les instructions parce qu'on vous donne des détails un peu plus sur qu'est-ce qu'il faut mettre dans le CV. Vraiment, il n'y a pas d'activités qui sont requises. Vraiment, c'est juste qu'on veut savoir dans tout ce que vous faites, à l'extérieur de l'école, comment ça vous a aidé à développer ces compétences qu'on met ici, comme le travail d'équipe, le leadership, la responsabilité, intérêt dans votre communauté? Mais on comprend que les étudiants, vous avez des opportunités différentes. Certains d'entre vous font beaucoup de sport, d'autres, ça vous intéresse le travail communautaire. Donc, c'est très, très, très varié ce qu'on voit. Alors, vraiment, c'est à vous de voir dans les instructions comment vous allez faire le lien entre ce que vous avez fait et les compétences non académiques. So I mentioned Casper there. I think I covered everything there. I will say, if you go to their website, takealtus.com, their best practice for this is their practice test. They have a full-length practice test, both for things like Casper and for our interviews. There are companies that will very happily make you pay a lot of money and say that they're giving you preparation, but this is not worth very much. They're not experts in the field. So I strongly, strongly recommend that you make use of free practice. And this is really a great way to both be comfortable with the logistics of the test and also to see the type of content that they'll be asking you. And similarly, the mini multiple interviews. So this is an interview style where we put you through a lot of little stations, little sort of vignettes. You'll be interacting either with actors in a stage scenario. You'll be completing a task and discussing it with one of our medicine admissions evaluators. Normally they're between 6 to 10 stations, about 7 minutes each. So they're very short, but it allows us to get a lot of different impressions of you. And it's focusing on your reasoning and your reactions and your non-academic skills. So in terms of dates and deadlines, so we're coming up soon to the March 1st application deadline for this year for the medicine preparatory program. If you're thinking about later applying to our 4-year MDCM program, the deadline for that is always in November each year. I've got the dates here for Casper. We will be sending our invitations to interview toward the end of March after we've reviewed the files. We have interviews this year in mid-April, and then we make our offer of admission. This year it should be May 12th. We make it on the same date as the other faculties of medicine in Quebec. So if you are applying to other faculties and you get multiple offers, you'll know what you have at the beginning. And then our program orientation starts a little bit earlier than other university programs in late August. So these courses start a little bit after that. Oops, I skipped over there. Right, so there are some documents to upload to us. So if you are applying this year, I actually recommend you start your application a little bit earlier, enter your data, pay, because then after you do that step, you receive a McGill identification number. Sometimes it can take an overnight. So if you're doing it the night before the deadline, you're cutting it a little bit close, and you need that ID number in order to upload your transcript to us. Or for example, if you're interested in applying to the Black Candidate program, you need to send us an email to let us know, and then we'll add the personal essay to your file. So just a few things that it's good to do in advance. And right, so as I was mentioning, if you do decide that you're maybe not going to apply right now, or if you do and we're not unfortunately able to accept you into the class, you might want to apply later directly to the 4-year program with a bachelor's degree. The bachelor's degree can be in any field. So for McGill, the majority of our candidates are coming in with the bachelor's degree. So it's our biggest pool. The medp stream is kind of like a very, very small fast track program. So for the 4-year program, we're looking for an undergraduate degree in any field. If you have your DEC, obviously from Quebec, it's usually a 3-year degree. We want you to have an average of 12 to 15 credits per semester, so that's considered full-time in Quebec, but you can be a little bit more flexible with that because we know some people have, an internship program where they're going to not have courses for a semester, so they might be coming in a little bit later, so we're a little more flexible there. You'll apply to us just in the last year of your degree, so you can't apply in the first or second year of your bachelor's program. You have to have actually completed the degree before starting medicine. If you're interested, we have an MD PhD program. So it's a joint program where you do a couple years of medicine, you take a pause to do a PhD, a research degree, and then you come back and finish your medical degree. But you can only apply to this program if you have an undergraduate first. So if you're coming straight in through MedP, there are lots of research opportunities, but there's not an opportunity to kind of obtain and complete a PhD there. If you're not in a science deck right now, You can still apply to medicine later after you finish your bachelor's degree, but you'll need to get those basic science courses in university, or maybe you want to take one in the summer at a CEGEP or what have you. So I mentioned here that we're looking for 2 courses each of biology, chemistry, and physics with labs, and then also an organic chemistry course with labs. People often ask questions about tuition. How much does it cost? So I would say the majority of our students are using, government aid to fund their studies, of course. McGill also provides tons of money in bursaries and loans for students who are in financial need. So that's open to everybody. Our central financial aid office is there and willing to help. We also have some entrance scholarships just for our students based on academic merit. So if you perform really strongly in the process, which is often the case for our MedP students. And we have some specific scholarships for groups of students as well. So to give you a little idea, for the MedP year, the tuition and fees are about $4,000. This is the same as for the first year of any bachelor's program at McGill, because it's actually overseen by the Faculty of Science. And then as you go through your medical program, it's a bit more, but it depends on how many courses you are doing per year. So there are the most courses in the first year, and then it gets a little bit less as you go in through your clinical work. So we have some students here with us today at our booth. So please go find our student ambassador booth if you'd like to talk to some of our students. Definitely still this year, email is the best way to reach us. We're still not always in the office yet. We're hoping to get back really soon. You can also request a short virtual meeting with us as well. So that's great. And of course, we have our website here. It's a fantastic source for all of our policies and procedures. I really encourage people to take a moment and have a look there. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to go. I saw we had some questions in the chat, so I'm just going to open that up, and then I will be able to answer some of those questions that came in. All right, let's see. Someone asked me how many applicants there were for 73 admissions. So I am going to tell you our statistics. I have them on my website over here from the last cycle. And so for MedP last year, we had just over 1,000 applicants for about 73 spots. So it is very competitive for sure. I mean, it does vary each year on who applies. We normally have around the same number of spots in that group each year. For Med 3 and 4, do you have classes to follow, or is really just practice? So it's mostly practice, like you're in the hospital, you have a supervisor, they're giving you feedback. I mean, you still, you get your pass fail grade for that, but there are some classes too. They're more punctual. So it might be like for 3 weeks, every Tuesday afternoon, you go in and have a class on a specific topic, and that class is over. So it's definitely mostly in the hospital. Someone's question, when you apply to MedP for your first year of university, do you go straight to med school or do you get your bachelor's degree? So when you're applying to MedP, you will just do that 1 year. And if everything goes well in that 1 year, you'll go immediately into medical school. There's no additional admissions process. We just make sure that, as I mentioned, your grades are good and you're acting professionally. So you don't have to get a bachelor's degree, and you won't get a bachelor's degree. So if you decide to do a bachelor's degree before applying to MDCM, do you have to take a specific degree, or is anything fine? So I mentioned anything is fine. I mean, a lot of people choose science because I think if you're interested in medicine, you're interested in things that are scientific, but it's really not required. So yes, we get people with all different science degrees, kinesiology, but we also get people with engineering degrees, music, political science. There's always a little bit of everything in there as well. So, and if you apply with a bachelor's degree, will we look at your CEGEP grades? So no, we will no longer look at your CEGEP grades. We'll only look at your GPA at that point, your university level GPA from your bachelor's degree. So if you're thinking, CEGEP, it was not so great, but I know it's going to be stronger in university when I'm doing a different program or doing something I enjoy more, and then we'll just be looking at that. Someone else has a question here. Should I study for secondary school in Quebec for the whole 5 years, or just need to graduate from a Quebec high school? If the question is about the language, then we're looking for it to be at least 1 full year of study at the high school level. I hope that answered that question. For that, let's see. if we take organic chemistry 2 in CEGEP, is it a accredited class in med school? So for med school, there are no transfer credits or advanced standing credits. So everybody takes all of the courses in med school. Same thing in your medp year. I mean, you might not be able to take an organic chemistry class as your sort of your optional class, but there's no additional credit that you'll receive. Someone asked also same thing, if I'm in an IB program, do I have certain courses credited in university? So normally if you go into a regular bachelor's degree, yes, but because the MedP program is so specific, you don't get any transfer credit. You'll still have to take a complete year of courses in MedP. When will Minerva work again? Yes, so very conveniently this weekend, if you are trying to apply literally this weekend, they're doing some updates to the Minerva system, which is our online application system, and they're planning to have it back online, I think at midnight Sunday. So please try on Monday. Sorry about that. Puis j'ai une question ici en français. Il y a quelqu'un qui est dans le programme Sciences, Lettres et Arts. Et oui, il y a un cours de chimie qui comprend les deux. Alors vraiment, je vous encourage à nous envoyer un petit courriel parce que je ne veux pas répondre à la mauvaise chose. Vous avez mis les numéros de cours, mais nous, on regarde vraiment les compétences qu'il faut faire. Alors, pour nous écrire, c'est admissions avec un s.med, med@mcgill.ca. Comme ça, on va pouvoir vous répondre en détail. And someone's asking here, does McGill take into account the CEGEPs, like which CEGEP? The person's question is, for some CEGEP, it's difficult to have a higher R score than the others, despite having high grades. I would like to let you know that is a common misconception. So the creation of the R score really makes it even across all people. So we do not look at the specific CEGEP because mathematically it doesn't have a bearing on the group. So they've made some adjustments to the R score over the year to be sure, or the years, to be sure that it's fair to all people. I know that in the media, oftentimes people will come out and say, oh, it's not fair, I'm in this type of group or this, but mathematically from the government, reading through all the documentation that they've had of it, it's really, really a normalized score that accounts for those differences in groups. So please don't feel compelled to go to a particular type of CEGEP just because. And someone's asking, if I want to go into medicine, should I choose pure science or health science at McGill? So really, it's just a science deck. So as long as you're completing those course requirements, that's totally fine. Someone mentions, if I complete the MedP year at UDM, can I apply to McGill MDCM? No, you cannot. So if you get into MedP at UDM, their program structure is a little bit different, and it's considered already part of their medical program. So there's a rule in Quebec that if you start a medical program at any of the 4 universities, you can't apply to a different one for 7 years. So it's like, once you're in, you're in. I think it's because of the way the government really heavily funds medical education in Quebec, so they don't really want people skipping around. And someone's asking about French. So is Sec 4 and 5 enough in French to be qualified? Yeah, so if you're at a French high school or CEGEP, it's enough, yes. So what we're really concerned about is just to be sure for people for their that their French is okay, and 1 year full of study. We normally don't look at currently at if you're at an English institution, but you've been doing French immersion, that kind of thing, we're not including that for this year. So really it's if you've been studying at a French institution. Someone's asking, is it possible to transfer from a Concordia undergraduate degree to a McGill undergraduate degree? So like a Bachelor of Science, we don't accept transfers into or out of medicine, the medical programs, but for a Bachelor of Science or Bachelor of Arts, it is generally, you can apply. There's a category on the general undergraduate application site that talks about transfer students, so people who have already completed some university, and how to apply to McGill. So it's definitely possible. I would say we don't take the most people in out of that stream, but definitely people do come in. And so someone's asking when the MedP program starts. It only starts in the fall. Yeah, so there's only one intake each year. We don't start it in the winter at all. Great. So someone is a Quebec resident and they're Can I apply to MedP without CEGEP? So if you've done a different educational system, so no, that you're not going to be able to apply directly to the medicine preparatory year unless you're coming right out of a Quebec CEGEP. So I'd really recommend that what you do in that case is you consider applying maybe to McGill to a bachelor's degree and then apply to medicine just to our 4-year MDCM program when you get to that point. I think I already answered that question about when we start. So someone's asking a little bit about the CV. Should we focus on the description of the task or what we've learned from the activity? So I'd say a little bit of both. The CV is the template allows you 2 pages. You can add or remove sections, add or remove lines, choose the activities that have the most impact for you that you think really allow you to show how you've developed those competencies, but we do need to know a little bit what it was that you were doing there. So just, so that it makes sense to us. Since you're in CEGEP, you also normally will have access to a career center. So I really encourage you to do a first draft of your CV, bring it to your career center and get some feedback from the people there. And let's see, so someone's asking, so applicants who have completed an undergrad can apply to the MDCM instead of the MedP program. That is correct. So they are mutually exclusive. So if you're coming out of CEGEP, you're applying to the MedP year. And if you're completing a bachelor's degree, you're applying to the MDCM program. So no, there's no opportunity to apply to both at the same time. Does it matter if you do your bachelor's degree at another university and then apply to McGill for your MDCM? It does not. We don't have any preference. We don't give any extra points or anything to students from McGill or from any other university. We consider all bachelor's degrees the same. We've got people who are applying with degrees from all around the world. So someone's asking here, so are students who have gone through the MedP program disadvantaged in med school or beyond compared to students who've done a bachelor's degree or vice versa? That's an interesting question. So we've talked a little bit with our current students and with people who teach in our faculty about this. And the answer is no. So it's a class that ends up helping each other a lot, because for sure, the students who are coming in with bachelor's degrees or master's degrees or that kind of thing, they have a little more life experience. But the candidates who are coming in through MedP, usually you're a little bit younger, you've got a little more time in your life to devote to your studying. Maybe you don't have your own family yet, this kind of thing. So it's very complementary. So we find that people bring something, their own sort of perspective. As MedP students, you'll be often a little bit younger when you're starting your residency as well. So some people feel like they have more latitude to travel around for their residency compared to the older students, but really there's no plus or minus to it for that. Someone asked a question, if we don't get accepted into the program, what would you suggest to us to apply to another program first and then try again? So for the medicine preparatory year, you only get one chance to apply. So it's the year that you're finishing your CEGEP. So you apply to MedP, either we're able to accept you, great. If not, then you do have to do a bachelor's degree and apply later, at the end of that degree. All right, someone's mentioning, if you're taking first year university courses next year through a different university, how will credits transfer? So credits will not transfer to the MedP program. And so kind of what I'm saying is for the medicine preparatory year, you can't have gone on to other types of study. So you're only applying to MedP when you're finishing your CEGEP degree. So if we're not able to admit you and you're going on and doing other study at another university or whatever, then you're going to be working on finishing your bachelor's degree before applying to us. I hope that answers that question. And how is the GPA scale at McGill different from the scale used at Concordia? So yes, this happens frequently that universities use slightly different GPA scales. So I think Concordia maybe has a 4.3 scale because they have an A+, and McGill has a 4.0 scale. We don't have an A+. A is the best grade. So what we do for each university around the world and the many different scales that exist is that we actually take each course. We have you fill out a little Excel spreadsheet, but to help us, but we look at your transcripts. So we go through course by course and convert that grade over to the McGill grade so that we are looking at everybody on the same grade scale. So it would appear that your GPA is lower, but then it would just be out of 4.0 instead of out of 4.3, but so we can compare it to everybody. And someone asked, do I mean bachelor's degree of medicine in McGill? So maybe this was related to something I said before, but I'm kind of getting a little bit out of sequence. So McGill doesn't have a bachelor's degree of medicine or health sciences. We only have bachelor's of science degrees or bachelor of arts. So that's an undergraduate level degree that you would complete before applying to our 4-year MDCM program. So that's really the medical program. It's called MDCM at McGill. Hope that answers that question. And someone says, yeah, so if you do a bachelor's and you want to apply to MDCM, the deadlines are, it's November 1st every year. And so in that case, to do the Casper, you're going to be doing it before November 1st. So you have to do it fresh every year. So if you're completing your bachelor's degree, you can continue to apply if we're not able to admit you. And so you have to do a fresh Casper test each year. And the period is normally the end of August to late October for that. And someone's asking about how to prepare for the interview process. So I would say online, just for free, even on YouTube, you can learn a little bit more about the MMI in general as a process. It was developed a number of years ago, actually at McMaster University. So just to get a sense of what it is, but what I really recommend people do is to think about the experiences that they've had and how they've allowed them to develop sort of that critical thinking. We talk a lot about the non-academic competencies. That's really what we're assessing for. So think about your life experiences, how you approach situations. The Casper is actually good preparation for that as well, for the MMI as well. And then sometimes people will practice with a friend, sort of just to the timing part so that you're comfortable with, talking and then calming yourself down because it's kind of stressful sometimes and being able to move to your next station. Someone has a question here. Oh, right. So people, yes, I understand. So this question is, what if you're doing your CEGEP a little bit off sessions? Maybe you didn't start your CEGEP program in the fall, you started in the winter term, so you're also ending it a little bit of off session. So that's fine. In that case, you'll just apply to us so if you finished in the winter, basically apply to us at the next available cycle for you. I hope that answers the question. We understand that you'll probably have like a little gap session. And there's a question here. If you're not in the armed forces, can you still apply to be a military doctor? Yeah, so we've had some discussions with our colleagues in the armed forces who run this program. It's sort of like a little special extra program. So that program, it's only for people who are full-time forces members and they've had, a certain number of years of experience. They decide if you're eligible and they can apply through this stream. But they also have a program where if people get into med school and they're interested in becoming a military doctor, you reach out to the armed forces and they will be more than happy to talk to you about that because they have a huge shortage. So, and they do often give you some reimbursement for your courses too, which can be interesting. Of course, then you have to agree to work with them for a while. There's a question here. If I had to take my high school science prereqs in a remediate program, yes, and then transferred into science, yes. Yes, the answer is yes. So we understand that people who are in that kind of like remedial program before starting the science deck, it often means that their course schedule is a little bit out of order. So I recommend in that case that you submit with your application just a little note from your CEGEP counselor explaining your progression and that it's not for reasons of personal choice, basically. Do try, if you have control over it, to do your semesters as much as full-time as possible because that's what we like to compare in terms of performance. Let's see. Someone's mentioning that they're in their second semester of CEGEP and then will be taking some university courses because they're studying abroad, but will return back to CEGEP to complete some prerequisites. And will they be eligible? If you're going to be receiving equivalencies, then I think you probably will not be eligible because we won't see those 4 semesters with at least 6 courses that have an R score. So I think in this case, you would likely have to complete your bachelor's degree, that you would not be eligible in that case. Like I said, we're pretty strict with the medp program with these requirements. We take a lot more students in with the bachelor's degrees. Yeah, so this is someone else's question. Are your chances a bit better? Generally, they are a little bit better because we have more seats in the bachelor's degree program. It's also very competitive, but that's the case, yeah. Other questions that people have? Oh, a few more. Is there an equivalent of the MD PhD program for MedP students? So there's not. Really, only people who have their bachelor's degree can take that PhD program. Normally for PhDs, you have to have a master's to get in. The MD PhD is nice because you can apply with just a bachelor's. Some people also have a master's, but for MedP students or students who come in with MedP, there are lots of research opportunities. And often after you complete your medical degree, maybe you could go on to do a research-based master's and then eventually a PhD, but not as part of the MD. And someone asking a question, do you need to do a bachelor's degree before applying to MDCM if you're not admitted to MedP? Yes, that's correct. So you need to be in the last year of a bachelor's degree to apply to MDCM. How many semesters of college are looked at when applying to pre-med? So for our MedP year, we use your global R scores for everything that's available on your transcript by March 1st. So generally that's 3 semesters. So your whole first year and then the fall of your second year. We then do expect your performance in the winter to kind of maintain the same level. Oh, and a little clarification for a question here. Are any bachelor's degrees better than others when applying for MDCM? No. So I know the Francophone medical schools in Quebec do kind of like a little weighting. So it's like they say, oh, this type of degree is harder, so we give it a little extra, percentage factor. We don't do that at McGill. So all bachelor's degrees are taken sort of their GPA that we convert to the McGill scale is taken at face value because what's easy for one person may not be easy for another. So that's what we look at. Someone's asking a question. If you're interested in obstetrics, do you need a PhD or can you get into the MD program? So no, you wouldn't need a PhD. So for everyone who's completing the MDCM program, at that point, when you graduate, you're a doctor, but you can't practice by yourself yet. You need to do a specialization or a residency. And so either a residency to become a family physician, so a generalist, or a specialization to become a specialist physician, so obstetrics, internal medicine, cardiology, dermatology, like that. Yes, so Wang Jinyi, yes, it's fine to have that delay of a half year because you started off cycle. That's correct. What do the course schedules look like in the MedP program? So I think it's pretty similar to CEGEP. Normally you'll have 5 courses a semester. And so maybe, some of your courses you'll have 3 hours on Tuesday and 3 hours on Thursday, and maybe like a 1-hour lab on Friday. And then for your elective, you'll have, 1 hour of Spanish on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, this kind of thing. So it's pretty similar that way. You have some free time to study, do other activities. Someone's asking, do many people get in with R scores that are not 37, but rather 30.4.5 or 5? Yes. I mean, so once you get to the interview, we don't look at your R score at all anymore. It's really just the interview that counts. So the average though, well, actually here, I'm going to look, I have it up on my screen still too. So maybe if this is helpful in terms of those who are invited for interviews, the mode, the mode score is 36.5 as we group them by 0.5s. So for sure, not a ton of people with the 35s, but certainly it's possible. People who have the slightly lower scores, 4.5 or 35, and I say low, but they're really high, they'll have really strong CVs or Casper scores, right, to kind of balance that out. And so someone's asking, does applying to MDCM with a master's instead of just a bachelor's give an advantage? A very tiny advantage. So if you have a competitive GPA for applying, and I would say a competitive GPA for our Quebec residents normally is around a 3.8 or 3.85 or so on the 4.0 scale. So if you've got a competitive GPA with your bachelor's degree, doing a master's degree will kind of give you like a tiny bonus point, not a lot, but a little bit. So it's not enough if you have a lower GPA, doing a master's is not necessarily enough to bump you up into a competitive range, but it does give you a little bit of consideration. And someone's asking, if I take a course in the summer to take a little load off your second year, are you still eligible? Yes, as long as you're still at least 6 courses in each of your regular terms, fall and winter. So if normally you'd be taking 7 courses and you think, oh, I'd like to maybe take my English literature course in the summer, that's fine. Whew, I'm getting all talked out here. I hope this has been helpful and answered some of your questions. Maybe I'll take a few more questions, but we're right at 1 o'clock. And then I'll invite you if you'd like to chat with us in the room or speak with some of our student ambassadors about what it's like to be a student at McGill in medp or in the MDCM programs. They'll be happy to talk with you. Great. Well, it's been fantastic to see everybody and to answer your questions. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.